of the Los Angeles City Transportation Committee. My name is Wendy Gruhl, Chair. I'm joined by my colleague Bill Rosendahl. We are expecting our other members. However, we would like to go ahead and start this meeting because all of you were on time today, so I appreciate that. If it's okay with you, Mr. Rosendahl, and we'll hopefully get a third member, I'd like to have on consent items 1, 2, and 3.
So moved.
So moved, okay. We'll hopefully get a third vote. I think then we'll go to item number 4.
Item number 4 is a joint DOT Department of Disability report in response to a Gruhl-Labange motion relative to the adequacy of transportation services for the disabled and related matters.
I got it there for you in a second. Here you go.
Hello.
Good afternoon. My name is John Fong. I'm with the Department of Transportation.
Mitch Pomerantz, Department on Disability.
In attendance behind us is Access Services staff to address any issues you may wish to direct to them. The disability community has an array of transportation services available to them, the largest paratransit service in the county being Access Services, and the City Ride program being the largest in the city. The DOT has conferred with the Department on Disability and the Department of Aging and has agreed that the City Ride program is providing adequate service and that there are no major concerns. However, the Department on Disability and the Department of Transportation recommends that the Council requests that in 6 months, the Department on Disability provide a post-audit update report relative to constituent complaints and the quality of service provided by Access Services Incorporated. Since the Department on Disability has more knowledge about Access Services, the Department on Disability will take the lead and describe the major issues and answer any questions you may have about Access Services.
Thank you, Mr. Fong. The responsibility of the Department on Disability was to thoroughly review the audit report of Access Services Incorporated as called for by Metro's Board of Directors. This report made a series of recommendations which, if fully implemented, could dramatically enhance overall operations within ASI. DOD believes strongly that these recommendations, while potentially beneficial, do not adequately address many of the policy concerns this department has relative to overall ASI service as expressed by numerous constituents at meetings of the Commission on Disability during the past several years. 4 specific policy and service issues have been raised at COD meetings and at meetings of ASI's own Community Advisory Committee, which are not addressed in the audit report. These are, number 1, improper securement of passengers using wheelchairs, thereby creating safety issues. Number 2, overbooking of riders resulting in overcrowded vehicles, unsafe driving to make up time and unnecessarily long trips. 3, driver misconduct toward female passengers. And 4, driver abuse toward and unwillingness to take passengers with service animals. Other DOD concerns include the 2 surveys which are the basis for the audit were carried out by TCBA, which recently audited care evaluators in Orange County. They are the entity which conducts eligibility certifications both in Orange and in Los Angeles counties. And TCBA previously gave it a clean bill of health. Perhaps a more objective organization should have been employed to conduct this audit. It appears that neither of the 2 surveys were administered and tabulated by type of disability. Important because certain disability categories appear to file more complaints regarding the eligibility process and overall quality of service provided. The majority of those making complaints at commission meetings were persons with mobility and/or sensory disabilities. The audit fails to address concerns over ASI's corporate culture, a singular lack of openness and transparency as demonstrated by ASI management and staff at commission meetings and through continued unwillingness to share proposed changes in operations and policies and other critical information with the disability community. And finally, while ASI has agreed to the recommendations contained in the audit report, it makes no specific commitments relative to establishing benchmarks and timetables for implementation. Further, the report fails to include provisions for follow-up and/or oversight by either the Office of the Inspector General or Metro's Board of Directors. Without these, there is no guarantee that any of the recommendations will be given serious consideration. Notwithstanding our reservations, DOT sincerely hopes that ASI management will move quickly to implement the recommendations contained in the audit report. As such, DOD recommends that the Council request that in 6 months, the Department on Disability provide a post-audit update report relative to constituent complaints and the quality of service provided by Access Services Incorporated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we will have some questions of both of you, but we'd like to go ahead and have the public comment period, if that's okay with my colleagues, and then address some of the questions. Okay. So I'm going to call people up, and if you give, maybe add, can we add another chair, or was there a chant next?
Or a hand mic if they got it.
Yeah, I don't know if we have a hand, if any of those are long enough. Are any of those, I'm sorry, that someone I know won't need the chair there, so.
Yeah, they can
Any
be
of those
taken out of
long-
their cradles, too.
Yeah.
Oh, TV man.
Okay. I got that after sorry. It was, so, Rosa Amavisla? Rosa? And Rosa needs a chair. I also call Donna Pomerantz. Is Donna here? Okay. So if you wouldn't mind letting Ms. Pomerantz sit in the chair you have, sir? Excuse me. Would you mind? Oh, you got another chair? Okay. Thank you. Seriously. And then Fidel Valenzuela. Okay. Thank you. Rose.
Yes.
Your name for the
Well,
record, ma'am?
my questions, well, these are not questions, these are.
Can I have your name?
My name is Rosa Amavisca. Thank you. My concern is that sometimes access, when we're making reservations, the persons that are making the reservations to us, they're treating us like if we are just worse than homeless. And sometimes they don't pay attention to what we're telling them, and they even take us somewhere else. They take the wrong time, wrong addresses, and things like that. And also, the drivers don't wait for us for the 10 minutes that should, or 5 minutes that should wait for us. Sometimes they only wait 2 minutes, and they leave. I mean, I am a person that I walk very slow, and I need time. So they don't wait for me, and they just make a U-turn and leave. And last but not least, some of the taxi drivers are not so clean of themselves. So, you know, that bothers you.
And are the taxi drivers part of the access, or they're separate?
It's part of the, I think it's either
Contractor.
contract, yes. Contract.
Okay.
Have you ever filed a
Thank you.
complaint on this somehow or another?
I have, but it seems that they don't pay attention to it. So,
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Donna?
Okay. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Donna Pomerantz, and I am a member of the California Council of the Blind's Board of Directors. I am also president of one of the local chapters that is 50 members strong, and there are a number of systemic issues that are constantly occurring regarding access services. It is the recommendation, and some of my constituents also concur, that ASI and its providers and contractors, there needs to be an outside monitoring or oversight component. Because currently, the way that it is right now, it's pretty much like the cat watching the canary. And there's truly a deep concern for a number of systemic issues. The woman previously mentioned an issue, and that is a systemic issue. There are blind people who go out and wait for their vehicle, and they're constantly marked as no-shows. There are complaints that are filed about these systemic issues, and no resolution has come to being, and that is why I feel that it would be imperative if some sort of regular outside oversight monitoring component that would have no conflict of interest whatsoever would be put in place. Because the same systemic issues are happening. There are safety issues. People and service animals are getting hurt. Drivers are being put under stressful situations. There are serious language issues that are not being dealt with. And for a blind person, all we have is language. And that's safety for us. And we truly come before you to ask for assistance to implement and assist us with an outside objective monitoring system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fidel.
Yes, hi, thank you. My name is Fidel Valenzuela. I'm the Systems Change Advocate for the West Side Center for Independent Living. And I'm here to speak on behalf of the community at large with disabilities that require access services and ride on a daily basis. As a staff member and work with consumers at our agency, I'm constantly fighting and battling with access services, especially for those with visual impairments. We have a parking lot that's in back, and we have the street entrance in the front. And so constantly, riders are being told they'll be picked up. The driver comes in the front, and they're waiting in the back. I've had consumers out there at 5, 6 o'clock at night waiting for access, and that clearly shows that there is an overbooking of riders with the carpooling and where people get picked up and are definitely being left outside waiting. And there's other issues involved as far as services and evaluations. The care evaluators that are evaluating individuals, it seems like it's day to day. It depends who's doing the evaluations. They might go back 2, 3 times, and if somebody else is there that day, they might be approved. But most of the time they're not being accepted because they can't count change, they can't use their hands. But it's day to day. Individuals have disabilities that affect them on different days, different weather climate. So we definitely need another entity to oversee the evaluation process. And last, this affects people county to county. There is a law of a 21-day visitor's pass if somebody's going from one county to another, which is not being honored. So people are not able to come out to LA from, let's say, Orange County with that 21-day pass. It's not being honored, and they're left. And sometimes their services are out here, and they're clearly left in the dark. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I should have mentioned this earlier, that we do have a 2-minute clock, so thank you. You all figured that out, but I appreciate that. I'd like to call up the next individuals: Abigail Vincent, Robert Bracey. Chair right in front of you.
There's a microphone right here.
Okay. Robert's here. Abigail? That's you. Okay. That's all right. Just want to make sure. We'll help you along. And while Abigail's coming up here, we also have Deborah Turner. Is Deborah? That's you. Okay. Well, We'll just need one more.
Where do you remember where I am? I should have.
Thank you, Deborah.
Okay, my name is Abby Vincent. I've been an Access writer for about 12 years, and I've been involved in various activities of the Access Services Community Advisory Committee. And it's my impression that things are getting worse. Historically, we had a good working relationship with Access. They would listen to us. We had all kinds of forums. And now, first of all, the complaint process is not working, and it doesn't look like they're going to fix it. So they really have very little way of finding out what's happening in the community if they're cutting off these sources of information. And we really do need, some kind of external oversight in order to make sure that Access doesn't just ignore us completely. I think they're deliberately trying to discourage people from using the system because basically there isn't enough money, and that's their job, is to plan for the need that they expect to have and to try to raise money for that. And they've consistently blamed the riders for, well, we have enough money if only people wouldn't book 17 reservations a day and things like that. The new scheduling system is designed to make sure that enough people refuse the rides that they'll be able to, it's basically random, and it doesn't take into account the beginning and ending time of any appointment that you have. Some of the new vehicles have no ramps, the lifts don't work, and when they do, there's not enough railings for the 2 or 3 people that are forced to go on them at one time to hold on, and the steps are too steep and too narrow for people to climb, and they're so uncomfortable. I've seen people crying because they were in pain. They're basically wooden benches with a back if you're lucky. The overbooking, the rides are way too long, and I think that's another thing that needs to be corrected because it is discouraging people from using the system and really making it impossible for us to schedule our lives. And all of that needs to be changed, and I hope that we can have an outside auditor.
Wendy, can I
Thank
ask
you.
you something?
Yes.
You've been taking this Access for 12 years.
Right.
When did you notice a deterioration and it getting not good, or has it always been no good?
Well, there have been times when it's been bad, but then when they have a change in providers, it's gotten better. But I guess I would say probably the past year.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Abigail. Robert?
Yeah, my name is Robert Bracey. I'm basically here today to talk about them overbooking the Access rides. The last 12 rides that I've had, they put 4 people and a guide dog in a car, and I've put in complaints several times, and the very last letter I got back wasn't even anything I complained about. They said that I was complaining about the length of the ride, and that's not what I said. I told the person that I was complaining about the length of the ride with other people's legs on top of my dog's head, because there's 3 people in the back seat, my dog, and the driver and somebody else in the front. And it seems like, I don't know, it seems like I put in the complaints, but nothing seems to be done on the other end. And I've been taking action since 1993, and I've noticed a change in the last, I'd say, 6 weeks, where they've been putting 4 people and a dog in the car.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Deborah?
Yes, my name is Deborah Turner, and I'm also his PCA at times, but we have had that issue at least a dozen times this month about them putting 4 people in a cab with a service animal, and these are not small dogs, and it's very disruptive and harmful to the dog. But my other issue is the scheduling. I think it seems like in the last 3 months they've gone to a new computer software, which is absolutely horrible. We called, my friend here had a doctor's appointment about a month ago. It was a 4:30 in the evening appointment. He called and scheduled a ride to get there, and after a couple of calls, he finally managed to get a 2:30 ride to get to Pasadena from Glendora. But he requested a 5:15, 5:30 ride home, and they gave him a 4:40. He explained he had a doctor's appointment at 4:30, and 10 minutes is not enough time to see his doctor and get back outside to meet access. They said, that's too bad, this is what we have. He called back 3 times during that day to try and get a later ride, 6 o'clock, 6:15, 6:30, anything later. They refused to give him anything over the 4:40. I called customer service and explained that he had a doctor's appointment at 4:30, and it was impossible to have 10 minutes with your doctor, even get in on time if you got in on time. They said that's too bad, that we might try an alternate form of transportation. And she had an 800 number I could call to try for an alternate transportation. Out of curiosity, I took the number, although I was totally annoyed with the fact that I couldn't get a later ride. And the alternate transportation is like non-emergency medical vehicles, shuttle buses or whatever, $40 plus $2 a mile for transportation. He fortunately was able to contact a friend in Pasadena who said he could come and pick him up and bring him home from his doctor's appointment. When he went to his appointment, he found he had walking pneumonia. And I'm sorry, but when you cannot even get to see your doctor with Access Services scheduling the way it is, that's not right, and something needs to be changed. This is since their new scheduling went into effect. Prior to this, we could call and get a later ride, and pretty much 80-90% of the time you could get a later ride. It may not be exactly what you want, but it could be a later ride so you could actually see your doctor.
Yeah, okay.
Now they refuse to even consider giving you a later ride, no matter what your appointment is for.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here, both of you. Our next speakers, Bill Powers and Lilibeth Navarro, I think it is. He'll move the chair for you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Powers.
My name is Bill Powers. I live in the city of Duarte. I am myself not an access rider because I've not been certified thanks to the iniquities of the certification system. However, my complaint here today has to do with a situation that happened to my wife, Barry, who goes to work 3 days a week at the Junior Blind of America in LA. I'm submitting a complaint on behalf of my wife, Barry, concerning an extremely bad experience with Access Services on Tuesday morning, January the 8th of 2008. For the sake of brevity, I'm submitting a copy of the complaint form that I filed on the internet, giving all the details of our dealing with Access that morning. However, to summarize, Barry had scheduled a pickup from our house to her job at the Junior Blind of America. Beginning at 5:35 a.m., we waited inside the house because it was cold, but I had a direct line of sight to the street curb since I'm partially sighted, and I saw no cab coming, going, or parked outside on the street. At 5:50 a.m., Barry went out to wait for her 6:05 a.m. pickup. After that time window had elapsed, Barry called to inquire about the ride and was told that a driver had shown up. I then spoke with the supervisor who said there was no other available ride. By 6:50 a.m., Barry called customer service, who said that they could get her another vehicle, which finally arrived at 7:06 a.m. She arrived to work late and was docked accordingly, though her employer understands that, sadly, this is quite a common occurrence with Access Services. I filed a complaint online and have now submitted a printed copy of my complaint for further review. Only a couple of days later, we received a letter stating that the case had been investigated and her no-show was upheld. I did not have time to rebut the letter as I was helping my sister-in-law move. At issue is more than just a long wait on a very cold weather day, then having to fight for a ride to get her to work to earn a living like any normal-sighted person would. One issue is the callous and cavalier attitude of the call center supervisor who couldn't find another ride for Barry. Sensitization training is very much in order for her and for all the staff. Perhaps Access staff should try getting a ride to work via Access, and then, when their ride doesn't show up, they get docked, just like the patrons that help keep them employed. Another issue is the rubber stamping of this case. It's a case of he said, she said, when trying to prove that the initial driver was a no-show. I need proof that the driver was in fact at 1304 Highland Avenue, as Access states, but I do not think that the GPS system can verify this. So I want to print out an assigned notarized statement from the driver to that effect.
That's right.
Also, I find it incredulous that a thorough investigation was done since only a couple of days went by before we received a findings letter answering our complaint. What exactly was done in the investigation? We certainly were not called for additional follow-up information. I believe this complaint was simply rubber-stamped to close it without performing due diligence. In light of the above, here's what I recommend. Sensitivity training for all Access staff to include the awareness that, among other things, missed rides can and do cost jobs, could cause health issues for missed doctor's appointments, etc. Callous, detached, and cavalier attitudes on the part of Access staff must change to an attitude of helpfulness and cooperation. Attitudes such as, we can't get you another ride, should be replaced with, sorry for our mistake, yes, we'll find you another vehicle to pick you up. Access staffers should not assume that customers are wrong, rather that they are right and have legitimate complaints that need thorough follow-up. We who are blind or otherwise handicapped depend on services such as Access to get to jobs, doctor's appointments, shopping, and social events. We shouldn't have to feel like Access is doing us some big favor if we get a ride, and should not have to accept substandard service. If it were not for us, Access staffers would not have their jobs. So please remember that the next time someone calls in to complain about a missed ride before giving that tired old, we can't find you another vehicle. Respectfully submitted, Bill Powers.
Thank you, Mr.
Right,
Powers.
very good.
After Lilibeth, Pamela Hill Metz. Is Pamela Hill there? Okay. Thank you. Lilibeth?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Lilibeth Navarro. I'm the Executive Director of CALIFE, an independent living center covering Central LA. I've been in Access Services since October of 1994, and I'm permanently disabled from polio when I was a baby. These days, I have post-polio syndrome, and short of a miracle, there's no way that my condition is going to improve. In December 2006, I went home to the Philippines for a brief vacation. Before I left, I went for my 3-year paratransit evaluation and did not hear from Access Services until one day in January 07, while waiting for my late steady ride for work at 8:30 a.m., I discovered that my eligibility was cut off. At stake was my work, my health and safety, and my peace of mind. The outrage that Access Services would just yank my eligibility without as much as a notification or a fair appeal process was totally unacceptable. I had to act fast and deliberate, knowing fully well my paratransit rights under the Americans with Disabilities Act. This, as you know, is not a rare story for us with motorized wheelchairs. In fact, I am speaking before you here also for James Savage, a disabled veteran who occasionally uses the bus and who was just found ineligible by Access Services. By care evaluators. We went to the mayor's office for the resolution of this injustice, but to this day, the powers that be continue to manipulate the system and snub at this outcry. The board of ASI last week proposed the re-awarding of the evaluation contract to care evaluators despite persuasive testimonies against this from ASI riders. The mayor's appointed representative to the ASI board, Teresa De Vera, supposedly representing the disabled riders, has also consistently voted against our interests on the board, effectively ignoring the mitigating circumstances that make it difficult or sometimes impossible for the permanently disabled riders to take the bus. This growing segment of the disability community, not only those of us who use motorized wheelchairs, but our blind brothers and sisters, other disabled people who use assistive technology, or who may not even look disabled but in fact are disabled, have tremendous transit needs that deserve attention. For us now, there is no more same-day service from Access Services. Our only alternative for emergencies are expensive taxi cabs that do not have adequate wheelchair accommodations. In fact, when I had to go to the hospital in January, I had to wait for 3 hours just to get a cab. There simply is no feasible and commonsensical alternative to paratransit for those of us with severe disabilities. And the Access Services system, mandated by the MTA to provide paratransit services, is being allowed to discriminate against certain disability types. As a measure of this arrogance, let me tell you, even the recent MTA-mandated audit, and I spent 3 hours this morning reading it, did not mention nor adequately address the problem of disability profiling. Prop C money funds access. We demand a share of those funds to go to a friendlier, more ADA compliant system. If Access Services grossly misinterprets the Americans with Disabilities Act, we demand more fair treatment from the City of Los Angeles. Please do not agree to the awarding of the ASI evaluation contract to those that continue to oppress us. Thank you.
Thank you. Pamela.
Yes.
It's right there in front of you. There it
I'm
is.
sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Right there. That's
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Pamela Hill-Meds, and I am a ASI rider, Access rider. I'm also president of the Greater Los Angeles chapter of the California Council for the Blind, and I'm here representing not only my blind friends and fellow Access riders, I'm also representing service dogs, guide dog users. I have, in the last year, retired one guide dog who literally was destroyed in an Access vehicle because the driver was driving so fast that she slid and slammed into the ramp. So her guide work was literally destroyed. These dogs are $40,000 to $50,000 dogs. And we take time off from work, from school, from other issues that we're dealing with to go and get these dogs and train with these dogs. And when we lose a guide dog because of Access and their drivers' negligence, and these drivers are totally stressed out. These drivers are doing 24-hour trips in a 14-hour period. They are literally trying to get from point A to point B at the scheduled time without killing us, and that's exactly what they're doing. They are driving so fast and so recklessly. And it's not the driver's fault. It is ASI's fault. It's Access Services' fault, because they are routing these trips to the point where these drivers have 3 or 4 trips at the same time. Also, I recently got left in front of a restaurant because I had to meet, my husband and I both use guide dogs, and we could not book a trip at the same time because there was a third person with us with a guide dog. So I got stuck in front of an area of Pasadena. I have no idea where it's at, where I'm at. I'm blind and standing out there in front of the restaurant by myself at night with the restaurant closed. I was told by Access, "I'm sorry, ma'am, the driver forgot your trip." Come to find out, the driver was running an hour and a half behind. I also go to the CAC meetings, which is the Community Advisory, I forgot it, and I go to that every month, and I sit here and I listen to the complaints that are coming in, and the scheduling is ridiculous. For me today, I had to schedule at 3:25 to leave here because I either had to take that one or a 6:35, and they totally refused to negotiate another trip. I have watched 5 very vocal people resign from the CAC, and because they see that things are not being changed. I think everything needs, the audit and everything needs to be relooked at by an outside source. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, it's the Community Advisory
Committee.
Committee. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I think it's, is it Daniel Tokia? Dan? Is there, from CRS? Yes, yes, thank you, sorry. And is it Peanut? There's two of you? Dina? Also? Tokia? Yeah, okay, thank you.
This is my wife.
That's your
wife.
Okay. Okay, someone move that really close to her so she can get the microphone. Are you okay? There, I just didn't know if it went in. Okay. Thank you. You let your wife go first?
Yeah. Go for it. No, you go. Okay, she wants me to go first. Okay, I go first. That's fine. Okay. I'm Daniel Garcia, and one of the main issues that happened to me outside years, okay, is the fact that I was kidnapped for 5 hours and a half. 6. Okay? My wife knows it. And 5 hours and a half, 6 hours is a lot of time. And I was share ride with two other people. Okay? The lady, I asked her, how long has she been there? She told me 2 hours. She was a senior citizen, and she wouldn't, by the time she was out of the car, she was already urinating. Okay? It's hard. That's the reality of these people with disability. That's the reality of people of senior citizens too. And it's hard to see the people suffering like that. And I would like to see more people coming up front and tell you the stories that I can tell you so many times, over and over and over again. I would like to request one thing, if I may, to the public, I want to know that, raise the hand, how many people have been on that ride for more than 5 hours?
Yes. One of our staff.
Alas, I asked one of my co-workers, I asked my co-worker that that his wife had been more than 5 hours. Yes, 5 hours. So this in the follow up the complaint issue, my wife wrote a complaint, and also the complaint number, and she gave it to Hugh Hollenberg too, and he actually and the complaint number never went. The complaint number was never there.
Okay, thank you.
So something must be counted on, and I support this issue.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hello, my name is Dina Garcia, and I sit here before you wondering, listening to all my peers and all their stories, and I think to myself, how can the Department of Disability set this out? The Department of Transportation said everything's fine. Listening to my peers sit in the vans for 4, 5, 6 hours, it's not human. It's not humane, and it's not right. If an able-bodied person would sit in the cab for 5 hours, you better believe that cab will be sued. And because we have disability, we are oh, it'll be okay, it'll be okay. A lot of people with disability are not looked upon as protective members of society. Well, how can we be more 2-3 hours late for work? Our bosses are not going to take it. Your boss will not like if you would 2-3 hours late. So what would you do? You would get a cab or you would take a train to work so that you don't have to sit in traffic. We don't have that later. And by looking at me, a lot of people think that I live in a home or with my parents. But you'd be surprised. I am married and I have a 2-year-old son. And as a mom, it's so hard. I feel isolated. I don't want to leave my house with my son. What if I get stuck in the area for 6 hours? My 2-year-old son is not going to put with a 100. Anyone who needs 2-year-old kids, they do not put with that crap. So why should we?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Victor Allegria, Shirley Wakely. Is Shirley here too? Oh. That's okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Mr.
Sure.
Someone from the board can read that for no.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. I will do that. Thank you, Victor. And
Good
excuse me,
afternoon.
Joan
I'm
Taylor.
Mr.
the other-
Victor Alegría, representing people with disability in East LA, Los Angeles, and Gabriel areas, and I am here on behalf of the consumer like myself, who feel that the accessibility of public and private transportation for people with a variety of disabilities in Los Angeles City area, East LA, and San Gabriel community is still experiencing barriers while using the fixed route system as well, the paratransit system. One of the biggest barriers that the people with disability fact that many people with disability like me are being they need paratransit service when they went for their certification. People with disability like myself that make up the East Los Angeles community still experience difficult at times in getting to their places, employment, medical appointments, community meetings, social functions, etc. Result of these exceeding barriers, the positive of that there are a number of services that empower people with wide range of disabilities to live more independent, productive daily life. However, becoming increasingly difficult to arrive their final destination in timely fashion, people usually arrive late. That creates another problem together. Public and private transportation by monitoring, researching, implementation of accessible transportation programs and serving in Los Angeles County for all people with a variety of disabilities. I am here to give a strong support to that Department of Disability, jointly with the Department of Transportation, monitors adequacy of transportation service for disabled and related matters. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Joan Taylor, followed by Arnold Sachs, and then Hugh Hallenberg.
Ms. Taylor is over here. She says she's deaf, so she needs to read the screen.
Could they bring
The microphone?
here so I can read your words? I'm deaf.
Sure, Miss Taylor. We'll see if we can, I think that yellow one may be the longest one there, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Taylor. Nice to see you.
I am here with 2 specific requests, and I have made them in writing. And I hope that each council member will take the time to read the papers. First of all, in the next fiscal year, please give us the right to buy a second $84 taxi book quarterly. You may not remember, but in year 2006, you took away our right to buy a second book, those of us who have greater mobility needs. And that was the year in which the council had a $400 million surplus, and Ms. Gruhl, Brad Sherman gave your district a $50,000 transportation grant. The rest of us suffered. You cut the transportation budget from $28 million down to $23 million or possibly less. We've got to have that restored. We've got to be able to buy that second $84 book. Right now, we have only one $7 taxi ride a week, and we pay $2.65 to get in that taxi. We need at least to be able to go and return someplace, $7 each way. That's my first request. Please give this attention in the next fiscal year. The second request is this. It's the last two paragraphs on my page. That your 50-cent vans, you have two 50-cent vans in each council district. They cost the taxpayer $50 a ride. Now that is extravagant and exorbitant. That should be stopped. You can get rid of those you can get rid of those vans, and you can take four times as many people, increase your ridership 400% for the same money by giving them taxi rides. Schedule the taxi rides through the senior centers. So there will be a very limited loss of jobs, but there will be a great savings in maintenance and the cost to maintain those 50-cent vans. And incidentally, those 50-cent vans, what happens when no one schedules a ride? The driver gets a half hour free. There's all kinds of waste in that program. Please get it corrected. And it needs to come from the entire council. It should not come from just one committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Taylor. Arnold Sachs, followed by Hugh Hallenberg. Is Hugh here?
Good afternoon, Arnold Sachs. I've come before this council. I've come before the City Council, MTA, the County Board of Supervisors, and I've spoken to you about one of the major problems, and I'm going to read something from your own paperwork that you have here, that Access Services is administered by ASI. It's formed in accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. From the Metro Library, it says Access Services was managed by LAC-MTA. The department was restructured as a nonprofit independent agency under the name Access Services in 1994. I believe, Councilman Rosendahl, you asked somebody about a complaint and who they file it with. Well, the complaint that I have is that nobody's taken any action from the City Council. I've come before you, I've explained to you that big problem with Access Services and/or Access Services Incorporated, A, is that they're different organizations, and they need to be recognized as such because that's how funding goes. B, there's a huge loophole in the amount of vehicles that are afforded to Access Services providers and the drivers that are Access certified. Companies get contracts based on the number of vehicles, but they do not provide certified drivers, which backlogs all the calls, which turns us into a revolving door because there's not enough certified drivers, but there's enough vehicles. And if you see a vehicle on the road, you'll assume that it's an Access Service vehicle going on an Access call, but if the driver's not certified, he doesn't get the calls. And I know this from experience because I worked as an Access driver. I'd also like to point out, somebody mentioned that there's plenty of money. There's plenty of money, there's plenty of need, and there's also plenty of greed. Also, you asked about complaints. Who do you complain to? You have transit services operated by government agencies, nonprofits, not-for-profits, and private organizations. Who outside of those organizations can you complain to? Like the taxi cabs. Authorized taxi cab supervision?
Yeah, no.
Same business. They lead the organization at the airport. Who would you complain to? It's an organization that was created by the cab company owners. Who do you complain to?
Thank you. Hugh? Hugh?
Yes, my name is Hugh Hollenberg. I'm an activist for people with disabilities, and I'm currently serving on the board of directors of Access Services as the delegate from the Centers for Independent Living in LA. LA County. I am not an access rider. I have come here today to listen to the complaints, and I've listened very carefully. And the only thing I would say is that trying to provide any type of paratransit service in the county of LA with the funding that is given to access services by the MTA and the traffic conditions, it's almost next to impossible to please all of the people all of the time. There are over 68,000 riders in this county that are certified to ride on access services. You've not heard from 68,000 people here today. You have heard from a vocal minority, and I'm glad that they take the time to complain. I am one of the 2 board members that voted no on the renewal of the contract to carry evaluators because I have problems with the way the functional assessment was performed this last year by care evaluators. In my opinion, they made it too easy so that they could say, well, if you are in a power chair and you have no cognitive impairment, you can take fixed route. That does not take into account the secondary disabilities that all of us come across as we age. And so I'm torn here because some of the things that have been said are probably close to being right. Some of the things are close to being wrong. But I think that it all comes down to a matter of funding. If there were enough money provided to access services by the MTA, you would not have the problems that we have. Let's try and work together rather than throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I thank you.
Thank you for being here, Hugh. I would like to read Shirley Wakely, who was not who provided this to us. Access rider for 3 to 4 years. For the past 2 months, I've had much trouble at 6 a.m. morning calls and able to get the pickup times I used to. Much of time in the morning have to take 6:20 or 6:30. It was worse earlier. Got 5:05, 10, and 15. Still getting late pickup from time from work, 5:20, 5:30, and up to 5:50, 6:45, and 5:50 used to be the pickup times to and from work, which was perfect. Now I'm at work around 12 hours, Monday through Friday. The Access drivers told me that many are experiencing the same problem. The problem may be due to Access having 3,000 rider customers and only 150 drivers, or another problem. So I wanted to read that into the record. If you want to, that's our last public speaker card. You can move around to the other side of the table. Yeah. You can sit on the end if you want. You can move over the end. Clearly, this is a motion, and I'm not sure everyone that I introduced and Mr. Labange seconded, because I had heard many concerns raised by clients of Tierra del Sol, which is located in my district, and the concerns raised by a number of the people who utilize the services. And so I think you have both heard many complaints, which I know in the Department of Transportation's report acknowledges that these same complaints were heard at the Department of Disability as well as from DOT, and that the recommendations that are coming forward from the Department of Transportation suggest that there be a 6-month looking with Access Services to go through the audit recommendations that were done by the MTA. And I think, as I read in the report, that although the auditors, the MTA, say that it is, and I think this was in the report that you wrote in Department of Transportation, although they're in compliance in general with the contract, the services being provided are not at the level in which people would like to see, and that there seems to have been a change from everyone we heard in the last year, year and a half, that before that, albeit there might have been some complaints, that they have increased dramatically in the last year and a half. And so I know you mentioned that there were representatives from Access Services as to whether or not they've heard a lot of people and horror stories for individuals who have no other option but to take Access Services, and concerned about what that means, having to, as mentioned, 6 hours or 2 hours, whatever the case may be, dramatic as far as the dependency on this service. Have you had conversations with Access Services and to the implementation of the audit recommendations?
Yes, I have. However, Mr. Pomerantz probably would speak better to that, or the ASI staff.
Would you like to, Mr. Pomerantz?
Now, we have not had direct discussion with ASI. We certainly welcome the opportunity to do that. Our department, we work with all of the service providers as well as our constituents, of course. So we are prepared to work with ASI to see that this recommendation comes forward, and that implementation of the recommendations in the audit are also implemented.
And this contract with Access Services, and then there's a subcontract, it sounds like, with CARE, correct? Is that how that works?
Access Services is its own independent agency, and they have a contractor with care evaluators.
As well as with the paratransit providers, the actual providers of the vehicles to give those rides.
Because we heard complaints on both. And the funding's provided to Access Services that then subcontracts.
Yeah, through MTA.
Through MTA. And so how often are those contracts reviewed or not reviewed during that? I mean, is it a 3-year contract? Is it a 5-year contract?
5 years.
It's a 5-year contract?
Yes.
And the timing currently on that contract?
I'd have to check with Access staff.
The care evaluator contract, I think they just
That was
approved.
just for a new, okay, yeah.
The contracts with the paratransit providers, I don't have that information.
They would all vary because they were implemented at different times, and it's throughout the county at different areas.
Different areas, different times. And is there a representative from Access Services here?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And clearly, and we'll ask you to state your name, we've heard a lot of disturbing comments today and concerns about service. And my question to you is, there seem to be from the people who are here, universally that there's been, the last year and a half has been worse than prior to that. Could you address, was there a change a year and a half ago? And what is the complaint process to ensure there's an appropriate response by ASI?
Sure. My name is Shelley Verinder, and I'm the Executive Director of Access Services. To give you an idea, Access Services is governed by a 9-member board of directors. We receive, our funding is approximately a little over $90 million a year. That would be for this year. We're a direct grantee from the federal government, so we get about 50% of our funds directly from the federal government. 50% come from Prop C, and the remainder are fares, sale of vehicles, and that type of thing. What happened in 2003, the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990. And that legislation, or that law, ensured equal access to individuals with disabilities. And that included access to public transportation. So for those individuals that are not able to use the fixed route service, there was created a new service called ADA Paratransit. ADA Paratransit is intended to be one piece of the puzzle of the public transit fixed route puzzle, not social service transportation. Unfortunately, the regulation was not meant to be, it was not meant or designed to be a comprehensive transportation system for individuals with disabilities. So originally, when Access Services started, we primarily did the majority of our trips in taxi cabs. We first started out, it was about 75% of our trips were done primarily in the City of LA taxi, licensed taxi fleet. And in about 2003, the finances within Metro Prop C money and the competitive nature to get a hold of Prop C money, that the Metro Board of Directors asked Access Services, and then they first started with an ask, and it went to kind of a direction, that they wanted to move from providing, primarily we provided a lot of premium services. You had a couple of people here today mention same-day services. The ADA does not say that you have to do same-day services. They say it's a next-day service. So the Metro Board of Directors requested that the Access Services Board of Directors move to purely minimum ADA services. And by doing that, what they did is they asked that with ADA paratransit, there's two ways to control your costs. There's two ways to try to look at controlling your budget. The first way is with eligibility, when people were talking about the care evaluators. Access Services in 2003, 2004 moved to a functional evaluation to ensure that only those individuals that are truly ADA eligible are that become riders of access. They did this so that individuals that before we were using a paper process, and that by having a functional assessment, we'd have a better control over who caught on to the system. The second way, which started about a year ago, is that you can improve your efficiency by sharing rides. When we operated primarily as a taxi cab fleet, we did not have a lot of share rides. There was only 10 to 15% share rides. Today and every day, that number is going up. We're at about 55% share rides now. The taxi cabs now are only providing about 35% of our trips versus the 60% that they were providing before. And what has happened with that is our cost per passenger has been decreasing over the last 2 years. We have, our board of directors, we have really looked at securing alternative funding so that we can restore some of the services that have been provided. Last year we were successful, and I don't know, it's probably not the term, but of getting a federal appropriation in order to provide greater services and getting involved in the universal fare system for the city of Los Angeles. This year we're going in with mobility management programs to do travel training, travel buddies, reduced, LACTOA cards, the disabled ID card for fixed route services for those individuals that may not be eligible for access, but are disabled, so they're eligible for some services within the county. We're really coordinating with the LADOT on increasing the accessibility of the taxi fleet to try to lower those costs so that more people can there'll be more responsiveness on the taxis by increasing the accessibility of that. We're working with the Taxi Commission. We're also working with LADOT and the Taxi Commission on a project in order to try to, and this is a very shortened version, to increase the dispatching capability in the sense that we all together, working together, can be more responsive to individuals with disabilities that need transportation. And it is true, in Los Angeles County, the city of Los Angeles, and with Access Services, if someone uses a mobility device, their wait time to get a taxi is greater because the fleet is not out there. And we're tapping into those exact same resources that everybody else is. So I don't know, that's a lot of information, and I talk fast, so.
Well, and I understand that, lack of funding and all of that, and a portion of that may be a reason for some of the concerns, but others were, I think, more direct about the service provided and the ability when someone calls to get a service and the lack of customer friendliness in doing that and being able to address, because again, having to on a day that you have to go to the doctor and you can't really move it on same day, something happens and you have to go, and there's no ability to have that. Could you address some of the issues that were outlined by the people who testified today?
I think that on the complaints process, when you look at the complaints in general, as Hugh Hallenberg mentioned, Access has a little over 68,000 registered riders. We spend approximately $1 million a year on complaints. We understand that it is not, when a vehicle is 10 or 15 minutes late, it's very difficult for us to come up with the reason 2 days later or 3 days later as to why the vehicle was late outside of the window. What we have tried to do to address that is we operate something called an Operations Monitoring Center, which is operated by Access Services personnel in our corporate office, which is downtown here. And if someone has a problem with the trip today, or something is happening today, they can call the OMC, as we call it, and we will try to get somebody picked up on time. We shoot to get someone picked up within 45 minutes of that date, of the time that they call. And generally, I think about 85 to 90% of the time, we are successful in that. System-wide, we're going to have...
I mean, there were a couple, and I don't know, but there are a couple people who indicated today that they were just told, I'm sorry, we can't pick you up, and how does that?
Well, it depends on who they called. If they called the reservation number, which is contractor run, and they called the number of the person that they originally called to book the trip, no doubt, I think they will get that answer. If they call the customer service phone number, which is open 24 hours a day, then that is where this operations monitoring center works out of.
But wouldn't the contractor who is contracted to you be responsible for saying, we can't do it, but here's the number and I'll try to transfer you to that?
They're trained to do that. We record all of our phone calls, so if we received a complaint in our office regarding that, we would go back to listen to the call, which I know we do on a regular basis.
Right, I know, okay.
Riders are also entitled, they can ask under Freedom of Information Act 4 copies of telephone recordings that we will give them to them.
Okay.
So.
Right, I know I'm asking my questions, but I'd ask my colleagues here if they have any questions.
Hi, just again, thank you, Ms. Gruhl, for your leadership, and thank everybody for coming down, especially those who are challenged. You know, if we could say that there go, but for the grace of God, go all those who are not challenged as others are, but you struggled to come down here and testify before this committee, and it's been very helpful. I think everybody wants to serve people well. We have a Department of Transportation that has often been on the cutting edge of trying to create service for people, but we also have to count on people to deliver that. I heard the representative's liaison, who's not in the service area, and also the representative say there's 68,000 people. But I'm just saying, you know, you could say it's 68,000 people. The struggle that the people who came today represent a lot of interest that I hear them saying that something's not working right. You know, so whether it is, you know, 3 people who come in here, or whether it's 13 people or 23 people, you kind of listen to this. And I've been in committee meetings as a staffer over the years and as a council person for 6 years, so I think there's a real problem here. John, I need to look at you. Mitch, I know you. What do you want? Tell me straight out, what can we do to make this better for more people? I understand money is always a challenge, but it also seems like there's a missing link between those who you serve and your operation. And I also know, only because sometimes I see it, I look at people, and sometimes people, you take there are needs, and you are special people who have special needs, and not everybody knows how to give special needs to. I'm sure there's some drivers that you probably have files on that get wonderful notes and letters from people who make a difference. But I'm sure there's others who may not even, you know, they're just passing through. This is a $15 an hour job, or I don't know what it pays. Whatever. What does it pay?
$8.50.
$8.50. So there's one of the challenges there. No, okay, you can't keep drivers for that. John, give me a 1 minute, what should I do? Mitch, give me a 1 minute, what should I do?
Certainly, Department of Aging, Department of on Disability, DOT, and Access Services should get together and talk about the concerns that have been addressed today.
We have a representative. Mitch, you're the representative from the Department of Disability, and if any, at some point, I think it should be a team meeting of internal city department representatives, and then sometime there should be another agendized, whether it's your commission, the Commission on Disability, or whether it's the Department of Transportation's commission, whether it's the Aging Commission, James, to let this focus, maybe put it all together at once, so it doesn't inconvenience people. And Mitch, tell me, other than, in addition to more money, what else could be done? Because there seems to be a missing link here. I think you're well-intended at what you're trying to do. I think your representative articulated quite well on that, but there's something missing here, because you don't get this number of people coming down, even though this is a great building, to just testify. They come down because their hearts are not feeling that they're being listened to. Mitch?
Well, I think what's missing is we need to see a collaborative effort, not just between our three departments, because I think our three departments do communicate well together.
Okay.
But I think that we need to see a collaborative spirit by Access Services Management. They need to be willing to say, yes, we know there are problems, and we will work with you. We want to implement all of the recommendations contained in the audit report, and we want you on board to work with us to see that those recommendations are adopted, because as I said at the outset, I believe that if the audit report recommendations are implemented, that will go a long way to making the system and the service work better.
Good. Okay, let's take that as a note.
Yes.
I think
Mr.
Mr.
Rosendahl?
if you remark.
Well, I've been in shock and I've been stunned, and I actually am ashamed that the services are not up to par. And I think with $90 million and your fast talk, I wasn't satisfied with your answers. And frankly, I think you should get a tape of all of the public comments, and you should investigate every one of those complaints, and that you should come back in 30 days with an analysis of what this is all about. I agree with my colleague, Tom, about the folks who came here. It's an effort to come here. It's an effort for everybody, especially in this gridlocked city we live in. But for people with disabilities, people with special needs, and to hear them speak, I'm still stunned. And so there's no excuse at all for not giving dignity and respect. When I heard the one comment about a filthy driver, when I heard other comments about coming late, other comments about cavalier behavior, this is totally unacceptable. Unacceptable, period. Period. I don't want to sit in another meeting like this and have people coming up and talking the way they did about how they've been treated, how they've been frankly abused. And this is taxpayers' money, you know? It's big bucks that come from government to provide the kind of service that we should be providing to people within our society. So I'd like you to investigate the complaints, and I'd like you to come up with a plan of action of how we're going to improve this, or otherwise you shouldn't be in this business to begin with.
Thank you, Ms. Rosendahl. And I think what you're hearing from us is, when none of us want to sit here and hear from individuals that have not been given the services, the dignity that they deserve. And so I want to echo what my colleagues have said about thank you all for being here today, and to know that you were heard by this committee and what your concerns are, and that we are going to ensure that we'll ask the department. I think the two things that we came forward with was, one, not only internally for our departments to get together to make recommendations, but also with Access Services and representatives from the disability community. And similarly, asking the department to come back on City Ride and look at how we're doing on City Ride with our aging population. I mean, this is what we're going to find is a growing baby boomers of not only those who are disabled, but aging population that similarly need those services. And so we will come back maybe even sooner than that 6 months. We're giving that 6 months a report back that not only to their commissions, Mr. Labange, but as well to this council and to this committee. So, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, will we be holding this in committee then?
Yes,
pending
we'll
the
be
report
holding it in
back?
committee.
Hold it in committee.
Thank you all very much for coming. I really appreciate it. Thank you. We do have, there are
See you, Scotch.
item on,
I know.
he was having a nap there.
I wish I could be like Scotch.
Do have 3 items on items 5, 6, and 7 from the department. These are all related to parking structures, so I thought maybe we would take them all together.
Good.
Item 5 is a motion relative to the formation of a working group to examine a proposal by the developer of a proposed commercial project on 4th Street in Los Angeles.
Yeah, keep going, it's okay.
Item 6 is a motion Garcetti Gruel relative to directing DOT in consultation with the CLA to report on options of building a parking structure on 1633 North Wilcox Avenue.
Thank you. If we could ask the department to come up, and we do have representatives, I know, from CD. Oh, I'm sorry, you didn't finish 7. I apologize. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Item 7 is motion Huizar Labange relative to creating a task force to address the need for a parking to serve the Broadway corridor.
Okay.
Martin Bland, Department of
Thank you.
Transportation.
Sorry, go ahead. I know they'll take them a while to go up, but you can speak loudly.
You put the mic right in front of you.
Well, currently the CLA is, well, for item, I'll address them all together since basically.
Okay. Actually, I think we'll just have the department go ahead and make their presentation on the items, and then we'll come back. Because you listed the three items, correct?
Right, but the CLA is leading the task force.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I'm actually the
Apologize.
lead analyst pursuing the task force for
great.
these.
Thank you.
With regard to item 5, a private landowner has approached the city regarding a plan to construct a commercial project, which would include a public parking garage at no cost to the city, and then he would then lease it to the city for operation. So currently, the CLA has been discussing plans with the chief legislative analyst, and we've been pursuing a task force with, we're planning for a task force with DOT, Bureau of Engineering, city attorney, CAO, in order to determine the terms of the lease and prepare for possible negotiations and agreement between the private landowner and the city. That's for item 5.
Okay.
If you want to say anything.
And I guess I have an overall question, so maybe this will come, and we can start with item number 5. Each of these has, I don't see actual dollar figures attached to each of them.
Right.
And so my question is and I think they're all needed in some form or fashion, but if they're competing against each other for the same dollars, how is that going to be worked out between those three?
Well, currently the answer to this question will be decided when the task force meets before we actually engage in negotiations with the private developer. But this is also something that the private developer has to have an input, say in. But we want to make sure that every party that's involved in these negotiations contributes to the necessary allocation that would be equitable to make this construction efficient and timely. You want to have anything to add to that?
Yeah, for the 3 items, the Department of Transportation is just requesting we have 90 days to respond. We've had a big staffing cut, and with the budget, we do not have the staff to address things as quickly as we'd like to. We see all these 3, the 4, number 5, 6, and 7. Right. These are to be discussed further. They're just starting.
Just conceptually?
Yeah,
Okay.
conceptual.
Right.
So we don't have more details at this time.
Okay, I know we have representatives from CD14 and CD5. They'd like to come forward real quickly. Greg?
Hi.
Please, go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Adel Viscar, and I'm here on behalf of Councilman Jose Huizar's office. First, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to consider our item today. As you may already know, Bringing Back Broadway is one of the most important projects that our office is working on right now. And give me 1 minute. It's a public-private partnership that seeks to revitalize one of the city's most historic corridors. The initiative will link this area to new development like LA Live, Grand Avenue, and the Music Center. And as the area is revitalized, it will inevitably require more parking than is available right now. The councilman's goal is to make Broadway more accessible to residents and patrons, and he wants to do that in an economically and historically sensitive manner, which is why we are seeking the task force with more expertise. Our office is excited, and we are ready to immediately commence meetings.
Thank you. Greg, you want
Good afternoon, council members. Greg Fisher with the Office of Councilwoman Jan Perry.
Item number 5 is a proposal by a private developer to put together a project of parking for the Toy District. It is an area that's greatly underserved for parking purposes, and the project should be a win-win because the developer will build the project at his cost and lease it to the city for a period of 20 years, and with the object of actually trying to cure some of the parking ills in the Toy District, as well as curing some of his own because his family owns a number of lots and businesses as well as properties in the Toy District. So it's actually something that should work for both sides.
Carolyn, did you want
Hello,
to?
Carolyn
I tried to get you at
Jackson.
the table earlier today, Mr. LeBlanc did.
Well,
you were unwilling.
And even in council, she just doesn't want to do that, Ms.
You know,
Jackson.
you never talk
I'm
about stuff I know
shocked.
about, you know?
No.
Anyway, Carolyn Jackson, Department of Transportation. The department looks forward to working with the CLA's office and the various council offices to come to some terms with how we're going to wrangle around all these requests to bring forward a policy that works for all the citizens of Los Angeles. I understand the CLA's office is lead on this. Thank you.
Okay, if I could just ask one thing too. Question, you know, at some entertainment zones, Mr. Rosenthal's in favor of meters operating, he said 24/7, but I corrected him. I thought it should be, to 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Does your officers have any opinion on that in entertainment zones? Let's say in my district in Hollywood area, Larchmont, in your district Broadway, any meters that are on the street, they should operate late. It does that in Pasadena, it does that in West Hollywood, it does that in Santa Monica. And that raises revenue. You want to build things. I want the 9th district comes before 14. I want you, Mr. Fisher, first there.
Councilman
Pitch it
is so
off there,
kind.
veteran guy.
The idea of extending the operation of meters, particularly in our district, we feel is critical because with the
You
addition...
support that. Okay, that's all. Good. How about in the 14th?
I don't know.
Okay, so check, because I think it's something we got to talk about. We got to go to our neighborhood councils. See, right now in Hollywood, the meters go off at 6 o'clock, and sometimes people who work, who probably should park in a structure or on a lot, take the parking space. So then the business opportunity is there, lost in that sense. And also, Ms. Jackson, there are very silver short poles all through Rowena and Hyperion without the parking meter head. So I don't know when the parking meter head is going to be put on there, but for weeks.
Are those new?
Yeah, it's an expanded district. You haven't done it.
Okay,
And
so.
Rowena.
Myself, I know you know.
Rowena,
Hyperion,
Glendale,
where?
Hyperion, Fountain.
At
Fountain.
And
Yeah,
how
it's a
long
Silver
have
Lake
the-
district.
And how long have the polls been?
Oh,
in
for
place?
like a while, since I usually give them like
6 months or
no, almost
months?
maybe 4 months. It's been a while, I
Okay,
think.
we'll look into that. On
To
the
see what
other
it is. And
issue,
also
what-
at 2838 Rowena, it should be a pedestrian loading zone, because that's in front of a historic monument, number 335, an old firehouse, and it's a parking loading zone. It should not be a meter.
You're hard to keep up with, you know that? I'll tell you what, I'll work with your staff on these and
Thank you,
get back
Ms.
to your
Jackson.
offices. Thank
I
you.
think on the parking aspect as well, we are looking, I know in conversations with the mayor and some others, which is looking at our overall meters and certain areas definitely increasing, because at 6 o'clock, we're not reaping the benefits. And as you say, the businesses, there's no turnover. And if at 6 o'clock, someone parks there for hours. And so I think that there is going to be that possibility of doing, because you know as well as anyone else that parking policy can impact traffic if we don't. And
We're finding a particular problem with the Nokia and with what will be expanded to LA Live with the surrounding residential, because the commercial zones at the foot of those buildings can't really operate if somebody's parking for a game and tie up the space for the rest of the evening.
Right, yeah, great. Okay, so I think in each of these items, which you're doing, setting up task force, or part of that to come back with reports, because there are some overall issues relative to funding and prioritization of that. And
Right.
so hopefully you'll come back with them. Maybe some are faster than others, but we need to look at it as a big picture.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we'll adopt the CLA recommendations
Great.
on that, but looking overall at a policy as these come forward.
Okay.
Madam Chair, could I be excused?
Yes, you may. Can you just on this last item is yours?
Madam Chair, before Councilmember LaBonge leaves, does he wish to approve items 1, 2, and 3, which were on consent?
Yes, if you could, Mr. Belange, we did do items 1 through 3 prior to you coming here, so you'll do it on consent. Yes.
And as for 5, 6, and 7, are we holding those in committee or approving the recommendations in each of the motions and sending them forward to council?
approving the motions and sending them forward. Is that correct? I'll look at the CLA.
That is correct.
Okay.
Very good.
So on item number 8, Mr. Labange, is the feasibility, thank you all very much, dash pass and related matters. So there is a DOT report in response.
Phil. You don't want to do it.
Good afternoon. Jim Lefton with the Department of Transportation. With me is Phil Aker. This report, real quickly, is in response to a motion by Council Members Labange and Gruhl to examine the feasibility of implementing a new monthly dash pass. Bottom line is we felt that was a good idea. We have already initiated some demonstration programs to introduce the dash pass in a couple of our community dash areas. With the recent decision by the city to no longer accept Metro passes on city services, we did receive a significant increase in the number of requests for a dash pass. So we wrote a report to our Board of Transportation Commissioners recommending a new dash pass be implemented at a price of $9 per month. The board approved that recommendation, so we're basically getting ready to roll that out.
Did the council do it?
I'm sorry?
Council approved the fee yet?
The Board of Transportation Commissioners sets rates for the department.
So they already did it? Because I think 10, I mean, you're just going to have time making change. I think people's the same. What, Art, I'm going to ask you for $9 or $10. What are you going to rather give me, 9 or 10? I'm sorry, sir. All right.
Probably 9. If
They already
it's hard,
said it.
but,
They already said it there, Madam
Board
Council?
of Commissioners, yeah.
So this is good. So this is happening.
This is happening. We're
So
going
was
to
this-
roll it out.
Was this my idea that put that forward? Or did
I
you have-
believe it was, yeah.
Oh, and that's something. I thought it was there. Hey, something happens every day. All right, so I should call a press conference with Ms. Gruhl as soon as we get this done. We'll be out there on the street with the dash pass.
Great.
Okay, good. Well, thank you. Thank you. Phil, I don't think, and James, I don't think I say thank you enough to you guys, because I know I wrestle with you quite a bit on the 175 that's been reprieved to December and other things, so this is good. I'm proud of the dash service. I'm more proud of the dash service than I are the commuter express, but that's just my confession.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. No,
Thank
you
you.
weren't
That's
gonna
it.
miss. That was a good one. So,
Will we be receiving and filing then the DOT's report?
Send it to council so I can take the credit.
So I'd ask, we have 2 public speaker cards, not on this item, but on general public comment. Joan Taylor and J.K. Drummond. Ms. Taylor will bring to you the microphone. We can bring the microphone to you, Ms. Taylor. And Mr. Drummond? Yes, please stand. Ms. Taylor will speak first, and Ms. Taylor, you do have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Gruhl, since my earlier remarks were sandwiched in between the access speakers, there was no attention given to the individual requests that I made, that you consider for the next fiscal year definitely allowing us seniors and disabled to buy a second $84 taxi book. If you remember, you gave the taxis a 29% increase in rates November 05 and January 06. And then I came every month, but until April 07, you gave nothing to the seniors until a 7% increase you increased our book from $72 to $84. So my disappointment in presenting these facts to you and finding no response is hurtful. And I would tell you that the only reason I'm the only person here is because seniors and disabled have no group to represent them. Seniors for Action had their last meeting in 05, and there is no group to represent us. And people do not have the strength to come down to City Hall. Actually, I spend almost 3.5 hours to and from on public transport to get here. The second thing that I make clear to you, I asked, why don't you do an audit of the 50-cent vans, the 2 of them in each council district? They cost the taxpayer $50 a ride, $100 to take an old lady to and from a 99-cent store. That's exorbitant. And the Department of Aging, in this month's report from Laura Trejo, they refused to allow group rides They could go to the 99-cent stores and take 4 and 5 people because they only travel a 3-mile distance. And the Department of Aging is refusing. Well, why not get rid of at least one of those vans and give the money to the Transportation Department and give us taxi rides? We can have 4 times as many taxi rides for the same money you're giving one van ride. I hope my facts are clear.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. And as you know, we did respond to your many correspondence that you had with us, and asked the Department of Aging how to report, and actually followed through. Thank you for being here, Mr. Drummond.
Ms. Gruhl, Commuter Express 142 route from San Pedro via Terminal Island to Long Beach is our lifeline. It is generally good service, but it is now 26 days and 2 months since January 1st when LADOT quit accepting MTA passes. Some drivers are in malicious compliance with that and will not accept the MTA transfer. They're confounding the transfer and the pass. Some of them will accept the Blue Line rail transfer, which does not look like the ordinary bus paper transfer because it's printed on a machine. But some drivers are accepting it. There has been insufficient LADOT oversight. Remember, anything you say to a bad contractor can be misconstrued, will be misconstrued. There's poor supervision by the contractor. Some drivers are just in malicious compliance. So I would like to see more LADOT oversight, better supervision, and some training for the drivers. I'd like to see LADOT meet with, telephone, email, post a letter to Viola, who is the contractor, today. I'd like a clearer note on the 142 schedule that all MTA rail and bus transfers are okay. I'd like to see adding a simple picture of an MTA rail transfer to the Xerox of acceptable transfers. There is a Xerox of acceptable transfers. It doesn't say these are the only acceptable transfers. It just says these transfers are acceptable. The Xerox of acceptable passes for Commuter Express does say these are the only passes. But transfers are not passes. It's open, but some people you've got to hit over the head with something. I'd like to see Viola drivers trained never to touch passengers, never to wave hands in front of passengers' faces threateningly, not to bypass passengers, not to take passengers beyond their requested discharge stop. I'd like to see the mail-in complaint cards that were formerly on Commuter Express buses replaced. I haven't seen them in years. When it first happened to me in January, I just let it go. I thought that was startup problems. When it happened in February with this one particular driver, he would not move the bus until somebody put a coin in my behalf. I don't like to encourage bad drivers and bad habits, and I would not put any money in because I had paid for my fare. When it happened again in March, I complained to Ms. Jackson. Prior to that, I had sent a letter to LADOT. I just haven't seen any action. I've been assaulted by a driver. I've been threatened with not being picked up, that he would physically block the door if I attempted to pull that again. I was taken 2 stops beyond my stop, and he only let me out, not because I wanted out, but because another passenger wanted out.
If I ask you to conclude, I'm not sure why it says 3 minutes here. It's a 2-minute time period, but what I'd like to do is ask Mr. Lefton and Carolyn, who are here, to respond to your complaints in that area. And clearly, you know that MTA had reimbursed us for those, and then when they stopped, we were unable to continue those.
I'm not criticizing LADOT for quitting that. It was up to the City Council and who have members on the MTA board to get MTA to contribute those funds.
Don't need to come up here. I just want you to talk to Mr. Drummond and see if there's a way we can address his concerns that he's raised. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much for coming down.
Quite
Appreciate
well.
it.
It is an excellent line, but the contractor's
not
malicious
fulfilling.
drivers, I don't know.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate you having the time to
I
come down.
appreciate you staying and listening.
You're welcome. Mr. Sachs, you made it just in time.
Arnold Sachs, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your patience. Very quickly, today's council meeting, bus phase 2 for the Wilshire Rapid Bus Line is upon us. Phase 1 evidently took 10 years. Phase 2 has a time frame, we don't know. This weekend, the Dodgers are playing at the Coliseum. I know that there was a special event fee waived for the opening game at Dodger Stadium. Has anything been done to mitigate the traffic that they expect at the Coliseum over this weekend? Looking at 100,000 people. In the Rules Committee, there are several items for supporting the fewer legislation bills that are before the State Assembly. I would ask there, and I ask here, that there be a specific point made that the bills target either infrastructure or operation, and infrastructure take precedence over operation. All too often, these bills get passed and the funding goes, poof, disappears because it's eaten up by operational costs and the infrastructure gets put aside. And unfortunately, Councilman Rosendahl has left, but I would ask, he's been very vocal about his urging to get the Green Line reestablished. Is he moving on getting a Green Line Construction Authority revised from NPA so that they can move forward? Thank you for your time, and thank you for your patience.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. And with that, seeing no other public comment cards, and since I'm all alone, the meeting's adjourned.